I'd leave it all. Oh, for you, you.
Good afternoon, you're listening to The Fourth Estate. My name is Jim Wong and I'm your host for today's show where we talk about the top issues and news of the week. Today we are joined by Alex, Pippa, Alistair and Jasmine on Radio Brunel. Guys, just give us a brief introduction to who you are and what you guys do.
I'm Alex and I'm a heavyweight champion.
I'm Pippa and I'm a beauty queen and a journalism student.
I'm Alistair and I've recently defected from North Korea.
I am Jasmine and I'm a marine biologist and journalism student.
As you can tell, we're all about accuracy and being truthful on the show. So covering news from local news to international news, then back to entertainment and other stuff that range from across the world. Our first story today is a local story about, actually what was it about?
The police or something.
No, it meant the bomb scare, yes, that's number 5, our fifth story, the bomb scare of Uxbridge, sorry. Getting the wrong number.
Fire the producer.
So Ali, I think you did an article about this. So why don't you run us by the actual main stuff of the story?
Well, on Tuesday, which was the 11th, into Uxbridge got evacuated totally unexpectedly because a guy reportedly went up to a security or police officer and he basically said, "I have a bomb. I'm going to blow this place up." We don't really know too much about him. I phoned the press office and they said something really curious, the police press office. They said, we don't want to give away too many details about this incident in case people try to emulate it, which I thought was a bit weird because presumably they wouldn't give any details about any crime in case anyone tried to emulate it.
It's a funny crime to emulate as well, really, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I don't know. But yeah, the guy was arrested. He was 40 years old and he's been bailed. But interestingly, it has no relationship to the recent spate of terror arrests in Hillingdon. There was some kind of local speculation that maybe these arrests of like supposed Islamist fundamentalists had anything to do with this bomb scare, but there was absolutely nothing in common. And yeah, that was about it. Anything
you want to add, guys? Pippa?
I just think it's crazy that for quite a small place like there's this and someone from Uxbridge was arrested as part of that Remembrance Day
a bomb.
thing.
Remember about 3 weeks ago there was a bomb scare.
Yeah, it feels like Uxbridge has quite a lot.
It's oddly
of bomb
targeted
scares
by fake bomb scares.
Yeah, for a place that's quite small and quite out of the way.
I reckon
it's
a government conspiracy.
Illuminati.
I need facts to back you up, Ali, about that.
There are.
You don't need facts when you have the truth.
When I was last in Guantanamo, I heard some rumours from my cellmates, but I can't get into that really. But yeah, no, the main sad thing was it kind of interrupted the moment of silence it was Remembrance Day happened in, which was obviously kind of not great and disrespectful, but I guess a guy calling in a bomb scare doesn't have much care for respect.
Calling in his own bomb scare as well, which is
it's
a strange thing to do.
Quite a narcissistic thing to do.
Yeah,
I think it sums up Uxbridge perfectly that the main comments though from people were, "Oh my god, the cafes got really busy. Like Wagamama's had the roaring trade or whatever." And it's
what
just like,
what I liked
guys.
was obviously there's like most of the tweets were like, "Oh, I've been evacuated. This is so scary," or whatever. But there was a good handful of people who were kind of tweeting Odin like, "I'd actually just bought 2 tickets for Interstellar and I've been evacuated. Will I get my money back?" and stuff. And I thought that's the kind of attitude you need to have.
You got to prioritise.
During a possible terrorist attack, you need to be thinking about getting those tickets back.
But yeah, I guess they have to take everyone completely seriously, especially with the amount of arrests in this area. That's a likely place.
A lot of the shops didn't take it seriously though, because they evacuated the whole centre. Because I work in Into, and we got a letter around saying, "Oh, thank you for cooperating." But some managers of some shops didn't let their staff go.
Were you working on Tuesday?
I didn't work on Tuesday, but most of the shops did evacuate, but some just didn't take it seriously and didn't leave.
Yeah, I would not be happy with my boss telling me to stay there if there was a bomb scare.
I'd be out there. I'd be out the window, definitely.
But yeah, it's
But I guess it's kind of reassuring that there was such a kind of robust police response, because if it was like a real thing, then it's nice to know that the police don't mess about.
They take everyone just as seriously.
They do take it seriously, yeah. So thanks, Hillingdon Police. You guys are the best.
Well, that's right, you just heard about that. I mean, we'll see what happens next. I mean, I'd hope there's going to be no more scares in the future. Our next story, it's also linked to the police. It's actually about a police interview abuse about Medomsley Detention Centre near Consett, and they're being investigated because people have been coming forward saying that they were sexually or physically abused in the 1970s and 1980s. And now they're interviewing former wardens at the youth detention centre as after claims that there was a pedophile ring operating there. Any comments from you guys so far?
I completely missed this story in the news. I don't know how actually, but I didn't see anything about this one.
It wasn't that high up in the news. I found it after kind of like reading through BBC for a bit, but it wasn't really highly publicised, which is strange.
I feel like it's got to the point where there's so much is coming out from the 70s and 80s of abuse by people in power of very vulnerable people that you almost don't even like. It's not even getting that much airtime anymore because it's
kind of white noise,
so
isn't
common.
it? Yeah, we're just getting totally bombarded, particularly with things involving paedophilia. It's just we're being a wee bit kind of desensitised to it.
There's no closure from any of these stories coming out either. Really, it seems that they'll come up with these allegations and then doesn't seem to follow through.
But it's like you read it, you think that's really sad, but you're not shocked anymore because it seems like everywhere.
It does seem like everyone was doing it. Yeah, it's really strange, isn't it?
This one is the abuse of power and the sexual abuse and the fact it involved children. It's just like the trifecta of really abhorrent crime.
To be in that situation where you're, especially, they're supposed to be being rehabilitated, aren't they? And that is just going to make things worse.
It also feels like, I think, a lot of things seem to happen in the north of England in that point, which just were allowed to slip under the radar. Because there was all this stuff in Rochdale and Manchester as well. Obviously, this is up in Durham. And there's all this stuff that's been going on near Sheffield in a place whose name I can't remember. So it's just like, it feels like, I don't even know if it's because it's in the north it didn't get us focused on at the time or something.
Yeah, because it's not London. But then there's been a massive thing with the politicians as well, isn't there? Apparently politicians in the 70s and 80s were, I mean, they've destroyed files and all sorts of things, so doesn't seem to be any evidence of it.
But yeah, just to kind of show the scope of this, there were boys, there were kids who would get their friends to basically jump in their legs, jump off stairs and land on their legs so their legs would break so they could be removed from the detention centre. So yeah, it kind of smacks of, these soldiers in World War One, you'd hear about in the trenches, they'd put their hand up so, they'd lose a finger so they could get off the front line. It's similar to that. It shows just the level of desperation.
We're talking about the 70s and 80s with the paedophilia. I found out the other day there was an organisation that existed from 1974 to 1984 that was campaigning for the legalisation of paedophilia. It was called the Paedophile Information Exchange. And they essentially said that if a consenting relationship with a child should be legalised.
There's something like that still active in America, because Louis Theroux did a documentary on it. These people who are quite open about being paedophiles, but they try and justify it as it's just a sexual persuasion, as you might be bisexual, homosexual. They say that they're paedophiles, which is just so deranged and kind of disgusting. Yeah, they try and justify it as something which should be accepted.
Well, what was strange about this PIE group was that they actually received, allegedly, government funding from the Home Office. They received a lot of money. And yeah, I thought that goes to show the sort of scale of it.
Oh, is this thing where it's people who think they're paedophiles, but obviously are they themselves kind of really distressed by that, so they try and seek help to, I don't know what the word would be, to try and cure them of this.
This group it was just for the legalisation of it. They actually wanted it to be completely fine to have a consensual relationship with a child.
I don't know exactly where from, but people who realise that they have kind of paedophilic urges and that kind of terrifies them, so they seek help through a mix of like therapy and other methods to get over that.
Maybe that's something that needs to be sort of advertised more than that is an option for people.
Yeah, it's a tough one though, because even then that's kind of making it legitimising.
Yeah.
Not legitimising, you know what I mean? It's kind of justifying it a wee bit more.
It means they're seeking help though. I think it's good to
it's
encourage
positive in
people
that sense.
Getting these urges to seek help, because they might not know that they can do that. Obviously they might be ashamed. They don't know what to do.
I suppose it's better than because repression tends to be the real problem, doesn't it? Because
repression just snap and just ruin someone's life.
To bring it back to this, I mean, I think like with all of these cases that seem to be going on, it's just like how much of an abuse of trust it is. You know, like obviously these are kids in a youth detention centre, so like the chances are a lot of them probably didn't come from great backgrounds.
It's always the
anyway,
case
but it's also that like they've been put away. Do you know what I mean? Society have essentially
it's the
put
most
them there to be.
marginalised they always are
For
the victims.
rehabilitation as well,
I mean,
which
so
is
no
what's-
wonder they were trying to break
Yeah,
each
it's
other's
just-
legs to escape, because you know it
it's
is
a
just
totally
trust.
hopeless situation for them. It's really, really
And
bad.
this makes you think that it was people in authority, so they kind of were in the authority before, and then they decided to start doing
I've always
this.
wondered about that. About what's the test? You know, there's that famous test done in the 60s.
Was it the psychology
where they had
experiment?
prison guards and prisoners, and it's like
And they
what,
abused them, didn't
yeah.
they,
I wish
essentially?
maybe our producer could
That's
look that
the
up.
Stanford prison experiment.
Yeah,
there we go,
Individuals
James.
pretended
There we
to
go,
be
Jim.
Two different groups, prisoner and prison guards, and obviously some of them, they all sort of pretending to be the roles, but slowly began to actually become the roles, going through abuse, locking up, beating up the
And
prisoners.
they actually had to intervene and stop the experiment because it got
They did.
really bad. So yeah, I guess that shows that people who aren't overtly corrupt or really kind of depraved, they can in situations become
Yeah. Because
abusive.
there's things like Jimmy Savile where he would go to find vulnerable people, and he would go to the places where you find vulnerable
I always
people. but
wonder
then
how
this is
that
something
thought
different again.
process must actually happen though. Like in reality, how that must, pan out, where you go from presumably a fairly decent human being, you get some authority, you get some power, then everything goes totally screwed up in your brain.
Yeah, you feel you have power over these people that you're supposed to be essentially caring for if they're...
But I
Is
also
there, yeah.
feel with this, there's the fact that one of the police officers was jailed in 2003, one of them was jailed in 2005, and it's taken till 2014 for the others to be properly looked at. Like, it just feels like something that's still very...
It's little comeuppance for the victims, is it? They probably had the best part of their life just totally destroyed.
Great points, guys. So it's called now Operation Seabrook, and the detainees who were there were sent for minor offences, spending about 6 to 8 weeks at the centre before being released. And before we go on to our next song, I'm going to give you a little bit more introduction to our next couple of issues. We're talking about Kim Kardashian today,
Ooh,
and
hot
her really risque pictures. Then going talking about Jed Evans a little bit, and also as well on Katie Hopkins. Our first song right now during our break is Haim with Don't Save Me. Welcome back to the Fourth Estate on Radio Brunel. We're talking about issues and news of the week. We just talked about Uxbridge bomb scare as well as police abuse in Durham. Now we're moving on to Keira Knightley and Kim Kardashian. Beginning off with Keira Knightley. If you haven't heard or seen her pictures or magazines, Keira Knightley willingly revealed her breasts in a photo shoot last week to demonstrate how women's bodies are a battleground, saying that she would only do so if her breasts were shown as they are, not photoshopped or otherwise manipulated to look bigger or better. Because it does feel important to say that it doesn't really matter what shape you are, or our society is so photographic now, it becomes more difficult to see all those different varieties of shape. What do you guys think? Do you think it's a valid point to let her show off her breasts?
Power to her. Her breast, do what she wants with them. No, really, yeah,
Strong
totally.
argument.
Yeah, I kind of agree, to be honest. I mean, like, I think it's kind of sad that she felt that she needed to do that because she's been airbrushed for her entire career.
The main photo they're talking about is that movie King Arthur with Clive Owen a couple of years ago.
Yeah, but also Pirates of the Caribbean, she's talked about the fact they did some like real structural
She was
like
just a kid. She was
putting in.
19. Did you know that? She
She
was
was
so
19
young
then.
when she
Yeah.
did
That
Pirates
was
of the Caribbean. Yeah,
Those films were a long
yeah.
time ago, though, actually, weren't they?
Yeah.
Longer ago than I remember them being, if you know what I mean.
But it is crazy that Keira Knightley, like, I think she's stunningly beautiful and she's very successful, and you know, she obviously feels like this is something that she kind of had to prove, which I think is quite sad.
It's funny how it comes just after there was the fake of Emma Watson as well, though, wasn't there? There was someone was saying that they were going to leak nude photos of her, and then there was a rumour going around that, yeah, I love Emma Watson, right? It is no secret. And then there were rumours going around that she was then going to post topless, and then there was a photograph of her wearing a top where you could see through it, and then it turned out it was photoshopped anyway. It was a really strange situation, and then Keira Knightley's done this just
It's
after.
kind of odd as well in a way that it's like come after all these massive iCloud hacks, so all these like female celebrities have had pictures of themselves and all kinds of
There's been a lot
poses
of
and situations leaked.
kind of reveals about misogyny recently, hasn't there? Was that the woman in New York who spent 10 hours walking around, I think it was like a camera in front of her, and just guys kind of catcalling her and checking her out and things like that.
That one was criticised as well, wasn't it, for racial bias that made it look like they were mostly black
there's
guys.
also
Yeah,
another
essentially.
one that's come out recently of a woman.
The drunk
The
woman.
drunk a
Yeah,
woman
that
pretending
was
to be
literally
drunk and
terrifying.
guys trying to take
That
her
was
home.
really, really scary, that one.
Yeah.
I read somewhere that it might have been staged, but I guess the principle, the idea is still, still the same, because that totally happens. Guys take advantage of drunk girls.
But then I do sort of understand the opposite point about this Keira Knightley thing, in that, like, having a topless photo shoot to prove that you don't want people to talk about your breasts is a little kind of counterintuitive. But I think fair play to her,
Yeah.
it's her body. But I do understand the people. There's a quote here from Charlotte Allen saying, because nothing says my breasts are not public property, so clearly is making your breasts public property by letting everybody look at them. And I do think that's quite a valid argument as well.
I think it almost though makes it, the reason she's doing it is it kind of makes them seem like it's not a big deal. Like, because the pictures came out from Jennifer Lawrence. It's almost like celebrity selling around saying, why does it matter?
Try to defeat the taboo about it.
Yeah.
Trying to desexualise the female body as well, I guess, in the where as soon as the female body is on show, it's not just about sex.
Yeah, totally.
I think it's a brave thing to do, to go.
I think she
And
looks
photo-
beautiful in the pictures.
I haven't actually seen the
Yeah, she
photograph.
looks
She looks stunning. Like, she's got a nice pair of boobs. Like, I
Yeah,
don't
I
understand the
don't know if
problem.
she had
Like,
any particular insecurities, because there's not much substance to it. What about the other K in this issue, Kim Kardashian?
well, it's the contrast
Before we go
between
on to
that.
that, I mean, it's a bit of an interesting point because Keira Movie's The Imitation Game is coming out this month. Do you think sort of well-timed that she's chosen to do this sort of publicity?
What was
Oh
that?
yeah,
Very well
definitely.
timed.
What's coming out
definitely.
this month?
Imitation Game.
like Alan Turing with Benedict Cumberbatch.
Yeah, she's already been
It's
doing the
Isn't that
rounds.
to do with the code breakers at
Yeah,
Yeah,
Bletchley
the
Park?
Enigma-
she's
Enigma
like
code.
the female lead
Don't
in
think
it.
there'll be a
Though.
lot of boobs in that movie.
Well, no, she looks very like she's been made to look quite plain and dowdy in the movie. So maybe she just wants everyone to remember that she's still hot.
That's not a bad theory, actually. But yeah, she's been doing the rounds on all the shows, so I guess it's not going to be bad publicity for the film, is it really?
Yeah, it almost,
Oh, you cynical people.
Unless you're expecting to see some boobs, in which case you
Yeah,
might
it'll
come out very
it'll be
disappointed from the film.
Disappointed people go to that movie.
So, there's also a quote from Impact Nottingham saying that viewing a picture of a woman topless as some form of political statement is as damaging as viewing a woman's naked body as a sexual object. Do you guys agree with this statement?
no, I wouldn't say so. I mean, obviously you can look at it from both angles, but I think it also gives out a good message to, say, younger girls out there, or older ones for that matter, who don't feel comfortable in their own skin, might be embarrassed about the way they look. It kind of, Keira doing this just kind of puts herself out there and shows that it shouldn't have to be something that you're worried about.
I feel like she's choosing to make her like topless body a political statement as well. People aren't putting that onto her.
It's like she's
she did it purposely.
fighting
for that
fire with
reason.
fire. What's the best way to combat that kind of stigma? It's just to kind of play into its hands and totally turn it around on them. I think look, we're talking about it, for goodness sakes. It must have caused some kind of publicity, and for the right reasons as well. I would say I think it's a good move by her.
All right, moving on to the next K, as Ali said. It's Kim Kardashian, who recently posed for a magazine called Paper Mag, and with the headline, Break the Internet, Kim Kardashian. In that picture, she sort of recreates an artist's picture of 1976 portrait with Caroline Beaumont called The Champagne Portrait, in which a nude, smiling black woman performs sort of a champagne trick by popping open a bottle of champagne, and the champagne somehow just seems to pour into a glass that sort of rests on her butt.
On her what?
On her butt.
We will be
Scandalous-
using Gluteus
scandalous-
Maximus on the show, Jim.
I thought we were using the B word, Jim. I thought that was.
Let's keep it clean here.
Okay, so I mean, what do you guys think about this?
Fake. I mean, if you actually look at it, you can see the wee
I
glass
saw-
is really badly photoshopped.
There
on.
was
It's not real.
there was a post on Facebook. I'm not sure if it was completely real, but there was an unphotoshopped version allegedly next to the way they actually turned out, and it looks completely different. They'd made her butt look bigger, and they'd
Massive. It puts the Maximus in Gluteus Maximus. It is huge. It really is.
I think it's
It
just
is big.
interesting, like in the comparison of what we've just talked about, where Keira Knightley's purposefully posing for an unphotoshopped image to be like, this is what a woman's body can look like, and it's not a big deal. to Kim
I
Kardashian
know.
purposely posing
Legitimately
with
selling
the
her
most
body, yeah.
unrealistic bum anyone has
That's
ever
because
seen.
Keira Knightley's like
Apart
a.
from
to be
Nicki
like,
Minaj.
oh, look how everyone should look. Like, look at my massive
Keira Knightley's
behind.
a decent, honest, intellectual human being, and Kim Kardashian is Kim Kardashian. You know,
Yeah.
she's married to Kanye West.
And
I
with-
have-
Yeah, that says
yeah.
a lot about her.
I have to ask, do you even find the actual picture attractive at all? Do you think it's a nice picture to look
I
at?
think that's neither here nor there, to be honest.
It was
When
an
it's not real.
interesting picture.
When it's not real, maybe it would
Exactly.
be attractive if you could try and fathom it as a
I
real
almost think
picture.
she's over oiled as well.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah,
You
it's a
know?
bit disgusting.
But I think it's interesting that Kim Kardashian's bum is now almost such a big deal that no one cares that there's also a full frontal picture.
Mm.
Yeah,
like,
that's a good point.
Kim Kardashian has shown every part of her body with much happiness within this print, and everyone's just
and
like,
before,
but
and before
her
that as well.
bum,
And
you
before
know?
that.
Well, maybe if you've watched the
I wonder
tape.
how Kanye feels about.
Kanye
So
did
Kanye
some very
tweeted,
smug
he's-
tweets. Yeah.
He said
Yeah.
heading home now after seeing that
I
sort of,
see
it
that.
was released on Twitter. I mean,
I just enjoyed Kim Kardashian's tweet of, people say I don't have any talent. You just think, oh, babe,
That doesn't really promote.
don't
talent,
have any
does it?
talent. Like,
Catching champagne on your butt is quite a good
I
time, I guess.
good talent.
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
Kim Kardashian all
Got
over
masters in
though.
that.
It's like another big stunt.
You
Just
can't
to keep
deny.
herself famous for no
Yeah.
reason.
You can't deny she's done
That
well
is,
for
but yeah,
herself.
it's a good
though.
Yeah.
point. It's the saddest
From
thing. To
nothing.
stay relevant, you just need to do mindlessly inane things like catching
She's
champagne
made
in your
herself
arse.
very rich as well. From
And
it's
her mum
essentially
controls
a
it.
very rich, very stupid woman pulling a Mooney on the front page.
I
of
wouldn't
a
say she's
magazine.
stupid. I bet she's shrewd as anything.
I think her mum pulls all those strings, man. I don't
You
think
think
there's
so?
much there.
so let me cut in for a bit. So the magazine said that there is no other person that we can think of who's up to the task of breaking the internet than one Kim Kardashian.
Beyonce.
She's a pop culture
Kate
fascination
Middleton would have done
able to
that.
generate headlines just by leaving her house. Apparently, Kim is what makes the web think. Do you think she's the only one who can break the internet?
I do not think that Kim makes the web think. I think people are very
It's the opposite,
interested
I
in
think.
Kim.
What do you mean break the internet?
Yeah, I didn't
That
understand
was
the
the
caption,
title
really.
of that.
I mean, it's meant to sort of like break the server of the magazine, but they actually didn't do it. I mean, they jumped 1,400%.
Is that the hallmark now? Is that the standard, trying to break your own website?
Yeah, you just need
Well,
that
that's
many people
nuts.
so
looking
many
at it. It
hits.
doesn't
I
work.
mean, they've
If you want to do that, just piss off fucking Zuckerberg.
on Wednesday they generated 6.6 million page views, while napping 5 million of them being unique visitors, according to Drew Elliott, the chief creative officer of Paper Magazine, and they jumped from 25,000 visits to 395,000 visits. But they actually didn't break the server. However, when Jennifer Lawrence and the celebrities' pictures were sort of released, those did sort of break the internet. The server that they were hosted on did crash. I mean, Jennifer Lawrence versus Kim Kardashian, it's not really breaking the internet, is it?
But I also kind of think Jennifer Lawrence is I think a lot of the attraction of those was just how violating they were for Jennifer
Exactly. Yeah,
Lawrence.
there's something more pornographic about the Jennifer Lawrence thing.
But I just feel like Kim Kardashian getting naked in a magazine isn't really, it doesn't break. That's what you expect Kim Kardashian to do. If they had a picture of her publishing a doctorate in philosophy, that would break the
Where do you
internet.
think she goes from now? Surely that's the absolute base. That's the bottom. If you're that, irrelevant that you have to just
Has she
get
got a
naked.
music career yet?
She's effectively a page 3 model now. Like, what else can she offer?
No.
She's got
Acting.
a
She's
really
going to be in films.
big arse and oddly kind of dexterous as well. But apart from that, what did she do now? Surely that was like a card, or that was her ace or spade she was keeping to pull out when things go quiet. But from here, God knows.
It's not like it's gone massively downhill, like she's been completely out of the media for a long time or anything, though, is it? She's still been on the front cover of all the gossip magazines and all that sort of
And
thing.
she has just had a baby, so.
Yeah, so she's still had media coverage, so it's not like a last-ditch
Think of
effort.
the kids.
Mm.
Imagine looking at that in 15 years' time.
So I
And
have
what?
to ask about the actual picture itself because General Hobson, she says that she's sort of in a posing of a happy savage pleased to serve a very primitive vision to provide pornographic pleasure, presumably for a white male spectator. Compared to Keira Knightley's pictures of her, willingly exposing her breast compared to Kim Kardashian's, in that sort of pose, as in happy to serve the male individual. What do you make of that?
I think there's an element of it, but I almost I think looking at the picture, it doesn't even feel happy to serve the male individual. It feels more just happy to show off my bum.
I think I'm amazingly arrogant, to be honest.
Yeah, I think even the face she's pulling is almost the kind of I'm gonna make an awful lot of money.
Or is she
from
just a
getting
victim
out my
of
bum.
society's misogyny, though?
What they've tried to do, I think, is make something viral, and they were well aware of that, hence the caption. Or they were trying to make something viral before they even set out. Which
Really
they
good search engine optimization.
great SEO. SEO
Really
was
strong.
Absolutely spot on.
Some
It was
nice
on point
tags
with
as well.
this.
A
Yeah.
couple of hyperlinks.
That's what we should have done our
I
course.
don't know. I didn't read the alt text on the.
The alt text was poor, honestly. It wasn't the best.
We've just alienated the entire audience with this one conversation.
Digital journalism 101.
But yeah, do you think it should have been covered by the news? Because the New York Times didn't even cover this picture. The Washington Post didn't even put it on their website
No.
or
Yeah,
on the
of course
paper.
not.
But it was on the culture blog. I mean,
It's amazing
Is
how
this
many
news?
front pages of the tabloids it was on today as well.
And we are talking about it now as well.
Yeah, no, I think
Amazon
that's
right
quite
now.
nice. I think a situation, an issue like this should polarise tabloids and broadsheets. I think this is a perfect example of why they're tabloids and why they're not tabloids. So no, good play to the broadsheets for ignoring it.
But I also slightly feel like because I'm like, am I wrong? The one with her bum out is the one that's the front page of that magazine, which I'm not sure that I entirely.
I think I saw you
agree.
cutting it out earlier. I'm
Huh?
pretty sure you know which one it is.
Yeah, is it not on your wall right now?
Yeah, man, I love.
There
Kim
were some brilliant
Kardashian.
memes floating around already of the bum as
But
Peter Griffin's chin.
I'm
and-
just not sure that like to just be in a shop a massive picture of Kim Kardashian's bum. I think is a bit inappropriate. Like I think it should have at least not been right on the front page when anyone can see it.
It's ridiculous though how that picture goes viral in no time at all, but yet you release a news story on something actually worthwhile and the majority of people
No
won't know
one will
about
read
it.
it.
It's
Yeah.
but
amazing
everyone's
that
talking
we
about
all
Kim.
just struggled to talk about like all the facts about this
Yeah.
abuse cover up, and
Yeah.
yet all of us know about Kim Kardashian's bum.
And no one can deny it. Like everyone will know. Even if you don't want to know about it, it'll just be shoved into your face.
The joys of social networks.
Literally.
Yeah.
I heard about this first of all because of you, Jasmine, because it was on Instagram when I woke up
feel
one
it.
morning.
Guys.
You're the reason
You're
I know about the
welcome.
story. Yeah. But
all right, yeah. Anything to add, Alex?
no, go on, Jim. Continue, my friend.
Continue, my friend. All right, I'm going to cut to another break when we'll be playing Take Me to the Church. This is Hosier.
She's the giggle at a funeral, knows everybody's disapproval. I should have worshipped her sooner. If the heavens ever did speak, she's the last true mouthpiece. Every Sunday's getting more bleak.
Welcome back to the Fourth Estate on Radio Brunel. I am Jim Wong, and you just heard Fleetwood Mac with Chains. And today I am joined by Alex, Pippa, Alistair, and Jasmine. And today we're talking about the main issues of the week, the top news of the week. We just talked about Kim Kardashian and Keira Knightley, unfortunately. And now we're moving on to the bit more highbrow stuff. We're talking about John Major. So John Major, in a conference at Berlin, said that the UK may be poised to leave the European Union as for the first time. There's a strong possibility that our electorate could vote to leave the UK and to leave the EU. And he says that the chance of exit is at just under 50%. But if negotiations go badly, it will rise. What do you four think about this?
Right off the bat, he's talking nonsense. There was a YouGov poll about 2 weeks ago, and the percent of people wanting to leave the EU was a lot lower. It was around 20%. What statistic which is quite worrying is that over a third of people in another poll are considering voting UKIP in this general election, which like really seriously heightens the chances of UKIP getting into government, mostly through a coalition with the Conservative Party, which is a definite possibility. He shouldn't be bandying words like this around because that's seriously dangerous, particularly because last week Angela Merkel, the German Chancellor, she basically said, look, if Britain reneges on European rules regarding migration and freedom of movement, we're out. She won't put up any opposition for us leaving. And Germany obviously are the main state in the EU. So it's a really risky strategy, this kind of hardball stuff that he's doing. And I think he is politically irrelevant anyway, so he shouldn't be throwing this stuff about, to be honest.
He is a bit past it, and I haven't heard his name mentioned in a long time.
It's a really strong name though, John Major.
John Major is a very strong name.
Fantastic name.
It's a powerful name.
I almost feel like he's kind of doing it just to try and placate Tories back at home that are worried that Cameron's not going to do enough. Because John Major himself has said he wants to stay in the EU. I think actually the majority of people want to stay in the EU.
Yeah, they do.
I hope that's the case at least. I really do.
Well, the polls say they do, but what's worrying is that it is moving in a certain direction. And just to use the Scottish independence referendum as an example, it kind of 2 years before the referendum, the figures were around the same time, and considering the EU referendum's probably going to be in 2017, the time frames are kind of similar. So there is still, I know you can't take one president for another, but there's definitely a chance it could spike in concurrence with UKIP gaining popularity. I don't know, I'm just really genuinely kind of terrified that it happens, because if we leave the EU is more than a trading bloc, it's more than economic, it's about identity and standing on the global stage. If we distance ourselves from EU, we will almost certainly be closening our links to America, which I don't know if I speak for the rest of you, it's not a good thing. This special relationship is poisonous, in my opinion, and we should be distancing ourselves from the hard power foreign policy approach of America, and should be doing more what the EU stands for: soft power, diplomacy, economic sanctions. But that's just my 10 cents.
I also I think it's madness that all these statistics came out the other week saying how much money actually we get from European immigration, like how much it contributes to our economy, like the skills and stuff that the migrants are bringing over here. And I just think it's madness that there's still a big right-wing section of the population that thinks that actually, the UK would be much stronger without all these people bringing their skills and expertise
The
here.
places that seem to be sort of most anti-immigration as well seem to be the most diverse areas as well. So it makes you think that people are, in their day-to-day life, spending their time with people that have emigrated to this country, and then will go out and vote UKIP and just be completely kind of
I reckon
undercutting these people.
There's a happy medium somewhere. I think the immigration laws do need to be reformed, because Britain is not lacking behind per se, but it's in a position where the leniency of our immigration laws do make us more heavily migrated to than other states in Europe, which has to be altered, I'd say. I just hope the Tory government are capable to do that in a reasoned, kind of sensible way, which will curtail the advance of UKIP. Because if they mess that one up, we'll just be in a terrible situation in 2017.
I think the mainstream media as well really need to stop with this demonisation of immigrants as a group of people. I think there's a real sort of, it takes away the humanity of it when you consider that these people are human beings and sometimes are coming here from very destitute situations with the hope of actually living a better life. And the immigrant removal centres and things like that, there's been a number of people that have died. There was an elderly guy from Canada who died in handcuffs. He had a heart attack while he was there, and I think that...
From Canada?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, and I think that the media need to really stop with this whole kind of immigrants are bad sort of thing, because there is a human aspect to it. Fair enough, the laws are flawed, but I think that you can't make these people seem other than us, because they are still just people.
It's worrying because people believe everything they hear. So parties like UKIP are almost brainwashing them with all these promises of how fantastic life will be outside of the EU. And in reality, if it did happen, the people that voted for UKIP will see the damage it could actually do. And like you said, the media as well, and the portrayal of all these immigrants, people just kind of believe everything they read. Even on places like Facebook, they're like, oh, these people are coming, stealing our jobs. But they don't actually, they don't have a leg to stand on. They're not.
The irony is, it's those kind of people who have those pejorative views of immigrants who will be hit really strongly if we leave the EU. They'll be the average person who's prices will go up from all European produce, 'cause we can import it tariff-free.
Holidays will be more expensive.
Exactly, you can't jump on a Ryanair flight and go to Malaga for the weekend anymore without paying through the nose. These kind of things, there's all these subtleties and nuances which people just forget, because the argument is always polarised into them and us, immigrants and natives, which is it's just so medieval and really backward.
We're not a superpower anymore either, and I think that if we were to leave the EU, people that want to restore Britain to this great sort of nation that we were when we had the empire, which was not exactly that great, where we were pretty bad.
And I don't know, if you open the platform for these increasingly right of centre parties, where does it stop?
People voting against their own interest is what it seems to be. It seems to be people being misled by political parties, and then will swing away from what might actually be good for them or what they might actually want.
I just think it's a mixture of mindless scapegoating and mindless patriotism put together to just identify something that can be blamed for the reason why there's economic trouble, or why you're struggling to get a job, why there might be high crime, when actually it's not the case. A lot of the migrants that come over are very well educated and get into good jobs. The crime rate isn't higher among migrant communities than it is amongst British communities. It's just crazy, really. And I think that's one of the best things about this country, that it is so diverse.
As Alex said, there's a tendency to always look at things in the form of statistics, that everything is a statistic. But you can't do that. These are people. These are human lives with stories and experiences and reasons for coming here, and they hope for a better life. And who are we to deny them that simply because we were born here?
And it's all these, the people that were living in makeshift shanty towns in Calais, just desperately hoping they'd manage to make it across the channel here. And the police went in and destroyed it all, and everyone was like, oh, look at them trying to get over here. And you just think, well, what are they coming from that makes them prepared to live like that in the off chance they could cross the channel?
I knew a guy I used to work with, and him and his family effectively walked from Kosovo in 1998 during the Kosovo-Albanian kind of civil war, or probably you wouldn't call it civil, but during that strife, his dad was taken away by a dawn raid. Guards took him away. He managed to escape, and he got into Germany. Didn't see his family for 5 years. Then they met up, and they just got across mainland Europe by hitchhiking and walking, and eventually got on a boat. Ended up in Glasgow, of all places. Back in gospel. And
that's racist.
Glaswegian people. And he is literally one of the cleverest, most sensitive. He did electronic engineering at uni, and he's got a fantastic job and just contributes to society in his physically and his materially and his taxes and stuff, but also just a total asset to society. So I think for every one immigrant you marginalise, there's someone else who's levelling it out, who's properly deserves to be here, and deserves the opportunity to the kind of life that a country like Britain can afford.
I think people take for granted as well how comfortable living is here, and they can't even fathom, say, places like Syria, how difficult life is over there, and the need to escape and kind of run away to safety, essentially. And people are blindsided by that. They have no empathy, basically.
And I always think that when British people go abroad as well, we're some of the worst tourists in the world. When you people complain about people coming to this country and not integrating into society, and then we'll go to a foreign country and expect everyone to speak English, and if they don't, it's frustrating. And
I just think it's just people have this very odd idea that they're somehow entitled to be British because they were born here, not by their own doing, not by anything. It was a coincidence that your parents happened to be British and you were born here. That doesn't mean you deserve a better life than someone who just happened to be born in a different country.
What does it even mean to be British? We are a kind of ragtag amalgamation society anyway. We're a massive empire, for goodness sake, which drew from all corners of the world.
I'm curious, there's actually a test, I think it's called the British test. Have you ever
tried
it out?
Yeah.
My friend who got British citizenship eventually, but he had to do this test, and he was saying that you can either study really, really hard, or the going rate to kind of blag it is £500. And he was saying he worked hard and he got it legitimately, but there was a guy there who just flat out didn't speak a word of English, paid his £500 and got a certificate, and it was then
I would definitely have to pay the £500. I am a terrible British
it's weird.
citizen.
It's like who led the suffragist movement.
It's really hard.
It is really difficult stuff.
I think they should make everyone in the country do it.
Do you think so?
Anyone,
Yeah.
no matter who
Well,
they
you
are,
turn
they
about,
can't do it.
60s or something.
Yeah.
I like that. If you're born, you get to 5, you set an English test, and then if you can't do it, you're ejected to a foreign country, become nationless.
Before moving on to our next story, Douglas Alexander, Shadow Foreign Secretary, said that Cameron has spent the last 4 years burning bridges in Europe instead of building them with EU leaders. Do you think you agree with the statement by Douglas Alexander? Do you think Cameron has been sort of ruining the chances of having been in the EU?
I think Cameron's just playing a very weird game of half trying to stay close with the EU and half trying to show that we're a really big, serious country and we don't need you guys at all, but also we kind of need you too. Like, I think Cameron doesn't really know himself what he wants to do.
He said in Parliament the other day that he is in favour of staying in the EU, but in a reformed EU. And I don't know, that's not really much of a stance to take. I think that's.
I reckon it's one of these odd ones where it's kind of inconsequential what he thinks, because he needs to pander to his electorate in such a polarising issue as this, more so than in other situations. So obviously he's conservative, so he's got his right wing support base. So he's got to introduce a level of Euroscepticism, because that is just the way things are going in his camp. But yeah.
I guess all major parties have said there's going to be a referendum in 2017 anyway, haven't they? I think, actually, have Labour committed? Labour haven't actually committed yet, have they, to the idea of a referendum?
I have no idea.
Yeah, I have no idea either.
I think Conservatives have said that there will be, haven't they?
But I genuinely think if there was a referendum, I think
wasn't it
we would stay in
Conservatives
the
said they
EU.
would if they won an
If they
outright
won.
majority in May. But I reckon the climate's changed so much since they made that promise that even if they did enter another coalition, they probably have to, particularly if they enter a coalition with UKIP.
Yeah, well, it makes you wonder what the coalition sort of agreement would have to be on
I don't
that.
know. Lib Dems are dead in the water. Labour have lost 40 seats because Scottish Labour has just gone into free fall. Yeah, it's going to be one of these horror. I was thinking about it recently. I studied history, so I can see the kind of everything that happens in sequence. Every kind of main historical event is very sequential. Like, First World War started with the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand. I was just thinking, I bet the no vote in the Scottish referendum ultimately leads us to leaving the EU, because it then kind of predicated the collapse of Scottish Labour. So then Labour's lost all these seats, makes a UKIP coalition with Tories more probable.
That would also lead to another Scottish referendum. I heard this morning as well that if Britain leaves the EU, there could be another grounds for another Scottish referendum.
Well,
so
there
that
totally
would
should be, because
interesting.
this is totally off topic, but there was another poll 6 weeks after the referendum, and there'd been a 10-point swing, and now 55% of people support.
It's like a post-referendum guilt sort of thing.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think that's what might happen with the European Union. We might stay, and then all of a sudden there would be like another rise in Euroscepticism, or we'll leave, and then there'll be like a massive swing the opposite way. It seems to be the way people vote and then
If we're
change their
talking
mind.
in hypotheticals, if Russia get themselves together and Putin starts getting seriously kind of shaky, and a second Cold War kicks off, and we leave Europe, we'll be in a terrible situation. There'll be bombs dropping in London.
It's a good time to be a journalist, that's all I can say.
Yeah,
we're going to be making a fortune.
And a heavyweight champion.
Realistically, I reckon Ebola's got us all dead anyway.
Yeah, we're all done for
I
anyway.
was going to say Ebola.
I've got a bit of a fever at the
Do
moment.
you think
actually.
so? Yeah.
All right, moving on to our next
Keeping it serious, Jim.
back to British. When moving on to British jihadists, Cameron has announced special orders that will ban fighters who are sort of think they've been fighting for the jihad entering the UK unless they comply with investigation. And it's issue of are these bans legal? Should they actually prevent people from entering the UK who are actually British citizens? And if they do enter the UK, they will have the passport cancelled and the name added to a no-flight list that would make them stop from departing the UK, so rendering them stateless. What do you guys make of this?
I think it's a bit odd, because I think that it might be all well and good to ban them from coming back to the UK, but the countries they're in aren't necessarily going to want them to stay there either. Like, we can't just sort of be like, well, they're not our problem anymore, so enjoy that, Syria. I think that they should come back and be arrested, and it should be worked out exactly what they were doing and whether they were involved in terrorism.
I think it's quite
But
hard
I don't
thing
think
to
you
prove,
can just be
The
like,
risk
you're
is
not
though,
a part of our country.
I disagree with that. I think with fundamentalists, you can't take risks. If they come back and they manage to beat the system and they blag their way back into Britain, if they have a proven record of fundamentalism, the chances are they're going to continue that when they're here, and they're going to, domestic terrorist attacks are going to be increasingly likely.
Well, I do wonder why someone would go to Syria or go to Iraq and fight for ISIS and then decide to come home. Do they decide to come home because they realise that they don't want to fight, or do they come home with the intention of continuing
ISIS have
fundamentalist
explicitly
activity?
said that when they've completed their mission, I don't know what you call it, their raison d'etre, and in the Middle East, then their international forces will be sent home. They'll be dispelled to take the war to the West. which is, I don't know, just some crazy fundamentalist tirade, or if it's a genuine threat.
So there is an end game. Well, apparently, anyway. That's what ISIS seem to think.
But I just think that, like, if you know who these people are enough to put them on a no-fly list, enough to ban them from coming in, then you know who they are enough to arrest them and put them somewhere secure and work out what they're doing.
I can imagine it's quite a difficult thing to try and prove as well, evidence-wise, to say you went to, because they never fly directly to they fly to one spot,
Turkey
and then,
or somewhere,
and then they can travel across. So I think to then say you went to Turkey, you must have been fighting for ISIS is a very difficult thing to prove.
Terrorist issues, there's definitely going to be a suspension of civil liberties, and certain minorities, particularly Muslim people, are going to be victimised in that respect.
It's a real serious catch-22. Do you give up your civil liberties for safety, or would you rather be more free but be at higher risk, sort of thing?
Well, that's it.
Right, I guess that's it. Just leaving on a sort of legal note, Dominic Grieve, Conservative former Attorney General, warned that the initiative would be a non-starter and that could breach international law and UK common law. However, Downing Street insists it has legal cover and it should be fine. When we come back after this song by David Guetta and Sam Martin called Dangerous, we'll talk about Ched Evans and Katie Hopkins, and back also to Rosetta, and ending on some other news as well. You are listening to The Fourth Estate on Radio Brunel.
Can't be sleeping, keep on waking without the woman next to me. Guilt is burning, inside I'm hurting. This ain't a feeling I can keep.
Welcome back to Radio Brunel. You're listening to The Fourth Estate, and we're talking about the top issues and news of the week. Today, joining me is Alex, Pippa, Alistair, and Jasmine from the MA Journalism course at Brunel University. We've talked about British jihadists, David Cameron, the EU, and John Major, as well as Kim Kardashian. And now moving on to a bit more tabloidy, we're talking about Katie Hopkins and Ched Evans. So Katie Hopkins has gone under the fire because she's recently tweeted several anti-Muslim messages on her accounts after a report of stabbing in Tel Aviv. One of her tweets reads, Palestinians busy knifing Israelis, two-state solution my arse, filthy rodents burrowing beneath Israel, time to restart the bombing campaign. It's a bit hatred and anger fueled. What do you guys think about this?
She's an idiot.
Essentially, yeah. I just think Katie Hopkins is one of those people who is such a waste of space and time.
More
and
so than Kim Kardashian.
and I mean, she is
She's
very
a waste of less skin,
essentially a rent-a-gob, because she will just say,
Rent-a-gob.
yeah.
That's
So a new expression.
That's
That's a legitimate phrase.
Rent-a-gob.
I haven't just made that up. A rent-a-gob. She will say whatever is controversial, so people get angry, and then they talk about her, and then she'll go on a show to be more controversial.
She's a
and then more people.
provocatiste.
She's
That
an
works
idiot.
quite nice.
She's made a lot of money out of it, but I think she's a not very nice lady.
She's the most insufferably annoying person I've ever kind of, luckily not come in contact with personally, but I've ever come across. What is she from? The Apprentice, years ago or something?
So Katie Hopkins is one of the Sun's weekly columnists and former British reality television contestant who appeared on the third UK series of The Apprentice.
I guess she got that column by running her mouth the way that she has done.
she's
Well,
just-
she only appeared like a year or two ago again on like This Morning, just saying
She was saying
stuff about parents naming their kids and anyone with a tattoo
it
should
was
get a job.
I saw the
and-
thing where she said anyone who names their child after a place is an idiot or whatever.
Her child
and
is
then
called India.
her child is called India, and
Yeah.
she said, yeah, but that's not after the place, so it must be after the.
She's just-
I have no idea what.
Just
it
when you think that you can't say anything any more racist or misinformed or just ridiculous,
She'll
goes
surprise
and
you.
does
She,
it.
that,
She
yeah,
surprises
she
you, and
keeps
it
you on your
angers
toes.
at me that the reason she is famous is because of the ridiculous comments she makes, and people she gets loads of retweets and favourites on Twitter, and it just
Yeah.
encourages
I guess the
more
thing is-
lots of people like her.
and makes it look okay.
But I almost think, if she's gonna mouth off about tattoos, mouth off about fat people, mouth off about parents and all of this, that's bad enough. But I think when you're actually spouting racial hatred, you've
Yeah.
got to
Yeah,
say,
that's a crime.
do you know what Katie Hopkins probably?
Let her spend a night in Gaza.
I think
See how she feels.
the best punishment you could give Katie Hopkins is to not let her on social media and not let her
Why
on
did
TV.
she get
I
such
think
a
she'd
platform?
self-combust.
And stop talking about her in the media.
Yeah, I'm
Would you?
upset actually that we're even giving her airtime because she's such a
There are
waste
kind
of
of
space.
parallels between her and Kim Kardashian in the sense there are nobodies who are only famous for
I've
Attention
never
seeking.
seen The
Exactly,
Apprentice, but I know who Katie Hopkins is, which is saying something about her kind of like media
But
savviness.
she was on The
She's-
Apprentice so long ago. Like, she just suddenly realised that she could make a lot
Was
of
she this
money
bad
if
on The
everyone hated her.
Apprentice?
Huh?
Was she this bad on The Apprentice?
No,
When she was
not
on?
at all. And she
No,
quit.
she-
Actually, she quit The Apprentice because she said she wanted to spend more time with her kids, and she was worried she wouldn't.
She was just a kind of vaguely posh one, wasn't she?
Yeah, she was an
really
absolute
hated her.
nothing.
But yeah, this is just barefaced racism, and someone quite rightly tweeted to the police, to the Metropolitan Police, saying, why is she allowed to incite religious hatred? Because, as everyone knows, in recent years, new laws have been introduced where you can and do get prosecuted if you are defamatory on social media.
Yeah, it's correct. With Liam Stacey in 2012, he was in prison for 56 days when he said a tweet to footballer Fabrice Mwamba calling him others the N-word. Another situation is also Peter Nunn, who harassed MP Stella Creasy and feminist Caroline Corrado Perez after they backed a campaign to put Jane Austen on the back note. He was sentenced to 18 weeks in prison. But however, a comment was sought by the Metropolitan spokesperson, but they were unable to confirm whether they're going to be investigating into Hopkins' tweets. Do you think she should go to prison for this kind of tweet?
Well, she's a
Yes.
massive hypocrite, and by her own inadvertent admission, she probably should, because she tweeted, where is it? David Cameron.
No,
No,
that
she
was-
didn't tweet
Oh,
that.
is that
Someone else
someone
tweeted
tweeted
it.
about her? Okay.
But I mean, to describe Palestinians as filthy rodents, it's just time to restart the bombing
to start the
campaign.
bombing campaign is a
I
disgusting
mean,
thing to say.
the racism and the arrogance behind that is just disgusting. Like, I am a pacifist, but I would hit Katie Hopkins in the face.
And
It's
just
just ridiculous.
Yeah, her lack of care for other people, and she doesn't think about what the people in these places go through. And
I don't think she cares about that sort of thing. I think she doesn't.
Yeah,
she never
she doesn't.
actually said that with any sort of political standpoint, did she? I think she just said that to just.
But like, they
annoy
brought down
people.
Israeli fire onto their own people. The amount of Palestinian civilians that have been killed.
And it's an Israeli government killing Palestinians, while it is terrorists in Palestine that are essentially the ones that they're trying to kill but are failing to kill and are killing civilians.
And also, like, what has it got to do with Katie Hopkins? Like, I don't
Yeah.
understand.
Her credentials
why
in this
she's
area
suddenly
aren't
the-
exactly proven, are they? Yeah, that's a good
Yeah.
point.
it worries me that she has children and what they're going to grow up to be like if they're around this all the time.
We get to go through this whole thing again in about 10 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it just worries me that she's given a platform from which to
That
be
is it, yeah.
as like,
She's just
venomous as possible.
Jeremy Clarkson squared as well, and it's like trying to take it.
She's worse than him.
Yeah, that's what I mean. She's trying to take it to like as close to the knuckle as possible, but
She's
not
trying.
even-
I think she got her inspiration from Samantha Brick, the Daily Mail columnist, who
Yeah.
got famous because she wrote a column about the fact that she was really, really beautiful, and it was so hard to be so beautiful. And it was a rubbish column, made everyone talk about her, everyone knew who she was. And then suddenly Katie Hopkins appeared doing very similar stuff. And it's just that it's better to be talked about and hated than
It's
not
the
talked about.
it's the
Yeah,
hunger for
it's
fame.
a good business strategy because it will keep you in the media. Because
It's
people,
working well for
because
her, you know?
everyone's going to want to try and talk to her just so they'll get ratings, because this sort of thing angers people. People will buy papers that say things like this just because whether they agree with her or whether they want to be angered by her, it does sell.
But this is a woman who is so desperate for attention that she's recently put on however many stone just to prove that she can lose it again.
Did she actually
It's
do
like-
that?
Yeah,
Pathetic.
she's
She's
genuinely
absolutely
done it
pathetic.
to try and show that there's no excuse for being fat and fat people are
Oh.
lazy. And so she spent time to put on, I don't even know how much weight, and then she was just going to lose it again and to show that she can do that. And you
There-
just think, Katie Hopkins, no one cares. Like, I don't care if you're fat or thin, I just want you to be quiet. Like,
Just stop talking,
Yeah.
please.
So Katie Hopkins has sent a tweet about our next story about Ched Evans. So reason why we're talking about Ched Evans today, because Nick Clegg yesterday said that he should not be allowed to return to train with his former club, Sheffield United, and that he was saying that if it was me, I wouldn't take him on, I wouldn't let him train, because football plays such an important role in the community. They are looked up to. What do you think about Nick Clegg's statements?
oh, what does anyone think about Nick Clegg?
It's
I agree with that
this-
one.
Yeah, no, I do. I do agree, but
it's
who
such
cares
a
that Nick
difficult
Clegg's-
thing though.
You don't
It's-
support him.
It'll
like-
probably be a U-turn by tomorrow. It changed his mind.
I think the whole Chad Evans thing is just really, really tough to call. Because on one hand, obviously, he is in the public eye and he's a role model and he's being, prosecuted for this crime. At the same time, he's done his time, and shouldn't he be allowed to re-enter society
Unrepentingly.
like any criminal who has been charged.
I think there's re-entering into society, which of course needs to be done, need to be rehabilitated and things like that, but to be able to enter at the level that you were exactly before, as if you haven't suffered any punishment, I think is a bit of an issue, because...
But also, like, rape stays on your record. So if he had another job, he wouldn't get that back. Like, if he was successful in any other part of business,
if it was
and
any one
came
of
out
us,
with a rape conviction, they would not employ him again.
Football's got a bit of a stigma with that of kind of misogyny and sexual abuse and things in general.
I actually think it's outrageous that Sheffield United had let him train again. If I was Sheffield United,
initially
I would be
they
trying
said they
to
weren't
make as
going to.
much distance between him and myself as possible. I think it's outrageous.
Yeah.
But I mean, even if you look at the NFL have sort of taken a really strong stance against things like abuse and things like that, haven't they? There was a guy that they fired because he hit his girlfriend, and there was a massive outcry because the massive amount of NFL supporters that were women. And I think that British football really needs to take something from that you need to kind of have strong role models just based on your supporters, because it's the example you're setting for them.
What it's doing is also kind of alienating other role models. Like, I'm sure Jim will correct me on this one. Was it Jessica Innes this morning?
Yeah.
Who said she would petition to get her name taken off the stand, Bramall Lane. There's a stand with her name on it, so that they're, by substituting one incredibly dubious role model, they're losing like a fantastic, really credible one. So, nah.
Yeah, I just think it's ridiculous. And I think it's also shown some quite scary opinions. I mean, Judy Finnegan, Richard and Judy said on Loose Women that he should be allowed to train again because it wasn't like the rape was a violent rape.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's ridiculous.
And you just think, like, what? Like, is that a sentence?
Rape
I don't
is rape
like.
is rape.
But it's by the act, it is a violent thing to do. Do you know? Like,
He's completely unrepenting as
That's
well.
the thing. Yeah, he
hasn't
still
shown
says he's
any-
innocent.
yeah, and you just think the poor victim in this case as well. I mean,
I think also when you have a job where you have a place that high in society and people know who you are, you sign up to having responsibility to be a good role model. And I think although you should be integrated back into society, I just don't think you should be allowed that role model status again, because young people will look up to him and think that that's okay. And also the fact that he's not accepting responsibility for it, and that I think it's just
it'd be different if he was totally repentant.
Yeah.
And
he did the wrong thing. And
and he says
I heard I was listening to a debate on this, and they had people calling in, and obviously there were loads of people, football supporters, who were like, oh yeah, he should be allowed to play again, whatever he did wasn't that bad. And you think, well, that's not the way to be looking at it. But then one person called in and said, what about when there's some young lad who loves football and he says, oh, why did Ched Evans go to jail? And his dad says to him, oh, because he raped someone. And then that kid then grows up thinking, oh, well, there's obviously no serious ramifications from committing a crime like that. If you can, right, fair enough, you're taken out of society for however long he was in prison for, and then you come straight back out and go back to exactly what you're doing before. There is no lesson learned.
The girl he raped can never go back to normal life. Like, it's never going to be easy for her again. So why should he be able to go back to a normal life?
Yeah,
and I think just the fact that he actually wants to go back to that shows that he's not even really repentant. The fact that he thinks it's an issue, that
it's not going to take any time out of the limelight.
Probably just a bit of a thug, to be honest.
Yeah, 100%. But I just think that every part of society should come down equally and say, if you rape someone, you're not allowed to go back to your privileged life.
And that doesn't help with the arrogance of football players. It tends to come about when you become good at this and you're paid a lot of money, then all of a sudden you think you're invincible, and they go out and they get like plenty of footballers have got in fights and things like that, and have just seemed to have become a bit too arrogant. And this doesn't help with that sort of that thing where you can do whatever you want as long as you're good enough at something.
And it's not just him personally, it's whatever campaign the team or even the league join against sexual abuse is going to be totally undermined by the fact that he's playing. It's just going to contradict everything that they're campaigning against. I don't think he should play. What Nick Clegg said was that he could try going abroad, which I could kind of work, because if he doesn't have that stigma abroad, then there's less risk he'll be influencing young people. But I really don't think he should be in the public eye at all, regardless of where he is.
100%. I think I think yeah, like we said before, like if he had any influential job, he would not get it back.
How-
And I think particularly when that job is one which is like you are a role model to young boys, and to openly have a convicted rapist on your team is just something which I think is madness there's even a debate about, to be honest.
So quickly as well to get his job back that easily. They said a couple of weeks ago they weren't going to bring him back on the team, and everyone seemed, it seemed like he was going to be, going to another team, or at least trying to go to another team, and then all of a sudden they're like, all right, well, we'll have him back that quickly. It seems like maybe even if they were going to consider it, it should have been a long way down the line. It shouldn't have been straight away. He should have had to have.
Nah, it's disrespectful, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think it's terrible, really, and I think he can deny it as much as he like. If there was enough evidence for him to be convicted and sent to prison,
You got to respect the rule of law. He was convicted.
Yeah.
exactly. So
Regardless of whether he thinks he was guilty or not, he is guilty, isn't he?
yeah, and who cares how well he can kick a ball? He shouldn't get to go back to having a lot of money and a lot of influence
I think
when he's done something like that.
also as the police are trying to encourage victims of rape to come forward more when it does happen to them. I think something like this happening, showing that he can just walk free back into normal
So,
life.
yeah,
it
what's the
might
point?
discourage
What is the
that,
point?
Yeah.
All right, moving on to our next story. We're talking about Rosetta and the Philae. So it's a combined effort by the European Space Agency and NASA to land a spacecraft on a comet. It's a decade-long journey to Comet 67P, also known as Churyumov-Gerasimenko, and it has culminated 317 million miles from Earth just after 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on Wednesday. However, even though it has landed on the comet, it has a measly 2.5 days of battery life to churn out as much data as possible. And once those are dead, it continues to operate on solar-powered backup batteries, but it's unsure of how long they will survive, because now the machine had bounced off the comet and then landed on a quiet area of the comet, which is quite secluded, and it can reach as much sunlight as it would normally have. It's quite an interesting discovery, quite good achievement. What do you guys think of it so far?
I'm a big fan of
I like it.
space
It's
travel.
nice.
And
It
sort of,
reminds me of
space
Wall-E,
stuff.
which is one of my favourite movies.
That's a
of all
good,
time.
good movie.
Never seen it.
That's
Yeah.
what we need. We need
Well,
robots cleaning up after us. But because it bounced a kilometre, didn't it? When they tried to land the first time.
Yeah, it bounced for
Bounced a
2
lot.
hours. So you just imagine everyone in the kind of centre, like,
For 2 hours.
stop it, you're like, kind of
They've
suspense.
probably been up for 3 days straight. Already,
Exactly.
and it's just like
Caffeine
sat
coursing through their veins.
But I think I really enjoy this sort of thing.
It's
this
cool
sort
and
of story.
interesting and kind of a bit of a distraction, but is it going to deliver any real indication of what are they looking for?
Well, the suggestion is that they don't actually know what they're going to find, but they're going to find something, which I think is a good
A
enough
dark
reason to do
hole.
something.
It
yeah,
says here
yeah.
that comets are essentially the same. How many years ago it says? They're the same ice balls they were a few billion years ago. So it can kind of.
It's part of the primordial universe, to quote Bill Nye.
Yeah.
In history.
I mean, I think, like, obviously it is, like, a crazily expensive thing to do, but I think it's pretty mind-blowing that they were able to land it on a comet that moves that fast. Get something that for
Particularly-
10 years has
I was going to say,
travelled
they
and
sent it
managed
out
to
in
land
2004.
And
Do you
historically,
remember
it's only
mobile
been-
phones in
yeah.
2004? We're talking 3310s here.
Yeah.
They
It's
managed
probably
to
made by Nokia.
put they managed to put a little
was-
remote control car on
We
a
were still
comet.
using PlayStation 2 back then, and they
that's a good
they
point.
sent
Yeah,
this stuff.
I like, as much as, there was a lot of issues
I
in the
don't know.
world
The whole
and
space
stuff, I
station's
think it's cool.
captivating, isn't it?
I think it's the greatest achievement of humanity was landing on the moon, and I think that it would be a
Never
shame
happened.
to just...
Because it's the
Illuminati.
It's the comet we've actually visited over the course of 10 missions. We did one in 2004, but it dropped an impactor in the nucleus of Comet Tempel 1, and then in 2003, we've only had one where it actually brought back samples from a comet, the NASA Stardust, and it got dust from it that was escaping from Comet Well 2, which had some remnants of glycine, which is amino acid, which added weight to the idea that comets could be the source of all building blocks of life. So interestingly, comets, saying comment, but also saying comet. What's interesting is that because this comet will swing past the sun, which means that the water ice on the comet will vaporize, producing ice glaciers. And so it's interesting to find out whether will it lose mass from the inside, will the ground collapse like a sinkhole, or will the comet actually break apart. So 500,000 people watched around the world watched the live streaming. Are you guys surprised by this number? Do you think would you expect more people to
Just
watch?
all the
streaming?
sciencey stuff aside, I think you really hit the nail on the head there when you're saying you're just talking there. You said we, and that's it. Space travel is we. It's everyone.
It's humankind.
Exactly,
For once.
and how many things? Yeah, it's a great equalizer. How many things can you say we? I mean the entirety of the human race. And I think that's really cool.
Seeing as this is so
spectacular.
this is so far away from us and not essentially anything to do with us, but everyone is like, yeah, we as a group, like there is no sort of separate groups. Everyone did this.
Until
This
it runs
exactly.
out of battery tomorrow,
I'm
and then it's
putting-
going to be like those crazy
idiots.
European scientists.
I'm not afraid to put this on my CV after this though. I
Yeah.
feel like
I was
I
gonna
had
say-
I've
quite
been
a
a part
large.
of this.
I was
mission.
part of the human race. Which, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Were you surprised by how many people were streaming on? How many people were watching the streaming? Do you think it should have been more people watching?
How many watched it?
500,000 people.
I-
500,000.
That's not a lot, is it?
It's not really.
Yeah.
I
No.
didn't actually even know that it was happening
Me
until
neither.
it
No, until it
happened.
landed. Yeah.
I watched it.
Did you?
I was 1.5 mil. Proud to say it.
No.
Was it good? Did you watch
It
for
was
2 hours
it was
while
quite
it like bounced
it was
around
quite
space?
blurry, but no, it was cool. It was like, do you remember that guy Baumgartner did the
Yeah.
skydive? I watched that as well.
Yeah,
He's
that
been
was
beaten now,
incredible.
though.
I just love watching
Was
that kind
it?
of stuff live. Yeah, it was by
Guy from Google.
yeah.
Doesn't
Google
count.
exec.
Doesn't count.
Yeah,
Google
no,
have got too
it
much
wasn't
money.
as cool.
Nah, Red Bull's better.
I was gonna say yeah, it's not sponsored by Red Bull. It doesn't
It's
get.
not interesting.
But yeah, no, I love that idea of space travel and space exploration being something which can unite us all, and I don't know, an endeavour of the species, not just one
Yeah, it's
particular group.
better for everyone's sake as well, because essentially they could find out where. Well, this is kind of probably the way they were trying to justify their funding, was that they could find out essentially where life came from, because there's a potential that life crashed to Earth from a comet, and things like that. So, I mean, maybe they're
You might
overstating
find
that
a guy
little
living
bit.
there. Can you imagine that?
There
Can
might
you imagine
be.
it in the live stream?
Neil
they just kinda-
Armstrong's still hanging around up there.
Imagine the live stream. They just rocked up and they're just like sitting there in like a rocking chair or something, or
Took your time.
maybe.
I think that is actually quite likely. I think they will find giant.
I don't know, maybe this is a bit more revealing of myself, but ever since I've been a kid, I've just been waiting for the day I wake up and check the news, and it's like
Aliens exist.
I've honestly, I say that totally seriously. Actually,
Yeah.
Something I've always thought since about age 5 or 6. I'm just waiting to hear that news.
I've watched a lot of
They're
sci-fi.
here or they've landed or something.
I've watched a lot of sci-fi films as well.
Yeah, so
and this
did
is
I.
the sort of thing where it's only a matter of time before we find some aliens that are going
That's
to
a
kill
good
us.
point. What? Yeah. What if it's quite a belligerent? What if it's like Alien out of the Alien franchise?
Yeah, I mean, it could be
not
Alien.
good.
Yeah, it could be Prometheus.
Like,
This
it
could be the
also
start of
might be
Prometheus.
Like, yeah, they're made to see
It could be
like,
lovely,
these awful beings, but
I'm sure we'll.
They might
I'm
be
sure we
better.
will.
What would make me laugh is imagine it was like the clangers, like somehow those guys had hit the nail on the head, and
That
that's
was-
exactly you should kind of.
That was actually them trying to contact us, but we just put it on the TV as a kid's show for some reason.
Well, the producers thought someone had sent this out. This is cracking good stuff.
BBC News are like, no, we got the wrong thing. Yeah, we need to send this.
Where did this
The-
come from? Who cares?
The only thing about all of this that makes me sad is that, I mean, if fingers crossed the battery lasts, it gets enough solar power.
And enough
Enough
social,
social.
enough social media.
It has a Twitter. It
it's not
tweets.
too
It does
lonely.
tweet.
But it says in March the comet will get near the sun, the surface will grow too hot for its systems to continue operating. And I just think, poor little Rosetta.
all the money and time that has gone into this for
And it's
the
gonna set it
amount
on
that
fire.
actually gets achieved and it gets set on fire.
Yeah.
Like, I guess that's the case with all space travel. Like, obviously they do find out a lot, but a lot.
Yeah, at least it's better than sending a
lot
dog
of
up there
time
and just
money
leaving
goes
them up there
into
to hang out.
But it's just the concern that it was meant to be getting 7 hours of sunlight a day to charge its batteries, and because of where it is, it's getting 1.5 hours of sunlight a day. So you just think, what if it's got there and everyone's watching and you just can't get anything?
Yeah.
Poor planning. Poor planning.
Poor
Should
site.
use
Poor-
Duracell.
poor Rosetta.
It's them again now. They messed up. It's not us. They messed up.
Alright, on that note, we'll play our next song. It's by Pink Floyd. It's called The Great Gig in the Sky. Quite relevant, I think.
Big tune. Big tune.
Alright, here it is. Welcome back to the Fourth Estate on Radio Brunel University student-run station. You are listening to me, Jim, host, as well as guests Jasmine, Ali, Pippa, and Alex. And now moving on to our last two stories of the hour before moving on to Johnny's night's show, The Gentleman. Our first story for this little part of the show is about fake Sheikh. Mazhar Mahmood, former News of the World undercover reporter, has recently been identified through a program on BBC's Panorama. And after that, 6 possible victims of his stories have contacted lawyers within hours of the broadcast. And that's the main issue, because now he's been exposed on national television. What do you guys think about that?
I don't really have much time for the fake Sheikh. I think he's...
What do you mean, no time?
we can't talk, we've got to go.
No, it's
we've got a bus to get.
I understand that he has got quite a lot of exclusive things. He's put a lot of people in prison, but it feels like he goes for quite easy targets. Like, picking on Talisa is I just don't really
pure
get it.
Entrapment.
Like,
as well.
yeah, this Page
Pure
3
entrapment.
model, Emma Morgan, who he forced to buy cocaine and then managed to get her done for buying cocaine, and you just kind of think you're making up your own news.
It sounds like he had the story in mind before he went to go and find it as well. It says that he wanted to prove that such and such a person was a drug dealer, and that's not the way you're supposed to gather news at all. You're not
and
supposed
he seems to it's not even relevant people. He may as well just be going through Tinder to pick people to pick on. It's just ridiculous.
It's like he deliberately wants to ruin people's lives. He said, like you said, he creates his own news, sets out to get a story, and doesn't care who he kind of runs over in the process.
It's not good journalism. Have I been cut off already? It's not good journalism at all. I think it is the sort of thing that is going to make people distrust journalists even more. And I'm going to have to say the word that I hate saying, but post-Leveson, it is just not the right thing to be doing. But I can see why he's upset that he's been kind of revealed by Panorama, because he's basically just lost his job. He's just lost whatever credibility he actually had.
And so it brings another question about the whole issue of the police and sort of the ties between him, because he had links with a private agency called Southern Investigations, which was known to have corrupted friendships with police officers. And a document produced on the program said that source met Maz, News of the World reporter, on this occasion. Maz was with a plainclothes officer. An officer was telling a story to Maz. I mean, what do you make of this sort of tie with the police?
Well, I think this has come up quite a few times with all the stuff that's gone on in News of the World. I think there was a section of the police who were happy to be bought out by tabloids in exchange for access to quite rubbish celebrities. But I just think everything about the fake Sheikh is very dodgy, and I'm kind of, if this is the end of him, I don't think many people will be sorry.
Yeah, I heard sort of briefly about the Talisa thing, but I'd never actually seen anything that he'd massively exposed. It's not like he was exposing sort of things that were really in the public interest. He was trying to make it look like people were dealing drugs that actually weren't. And one person has argued that he was the criminal because he was actually the one that supplied the money for cocaine, which I guess is a good argument if you get someone to go and buy cocaine on your behalf.
But also, he's tried to make somebody lie in court against Talisa, and he got found out in this case and it got thrown out, but you don't know if he's done that before, maybe he just seems like a bit of a bully. He bullies people into doing what he wants them to do, and whether that's picking up cocaine or lying in court.
His motives are completely selfish as well. There's no reason you would do what he was doing unless you were just in it for whatever paycheck might come at the end of it, because I'm sure it's quite a popular thing to do, to sort of try and drag people into scandals that aren't, because there was the thing about Twitter. There was the argument about whether that reporter was kind of entrapping politicians by trying to hit on them via Twitter, and it does make you think, are journalists kind of trying to make news because they want to sell and because they want to sort of promote their name, or are they actually doing it for the right reasons? Are they in it for the public interest?
I think it would be very interesting as well if any of the people he sent to jail end up managing to appeal on the basis of all of this new evidence, and it would be interesting to see just how corrupt the whole thing was.
I'm surprised that people have actually gone to jail from it as well. It seems really kind of iffy evidence, doesn't it? I think, especially seeing as there was the model, wasn't there, that thought she was going to be given a really lucrative kind of calendar shoot in the Middle East or something like that, and you think, if some really famous, really rich guy comes up to you and just asks for one favour and you'll sort of make loads of money out of it, I mean,
that's exactly what he did to Lisa as
yeah,
well.
yeah.
You know?
Who wouldn't just? I mean, it doesn't seem like a big deal, I guess, but he is the one that's committing the real crime, isn't he? Especially if he has actually been handling drugs and drug money.
And I just feel like getting Talisa for dealing drugs, kind of like, does anyone care? I mean, if he got Helen Mirren, it might be a story, but
I always think
Talisa, it's just like, well, yeah, she probably does.
I always think that people taking drugs is not a story. People dying from drugs and the crimes that come from drugs are stories, but people just taking drugs is something that happens, and that is not interested. No one cares that such and such person takes drugs, I don't think.
Blackmailing someone into getting you drugs, promising them the career break that they're desperately waiting for, I mean, that doesn't prove anything.
I think Panorama have really done well to expose this guy, because that is in the public interest for this guy to be gone, because I mean, like, if it carried on forever and he kept getting away with it, it's just, you know, how long before he just starts completely making up news?
And I also think Talisa, I mean, obviously she'd already been chucked off the X Factor, and I think by that point she was so desperate for a big break. He was offering her a big break. She would have agreed and told him that she could do anything he asked for in order to get her big break. I mean, he told her she was going to be in a film with Leonardo DiCaprio.
Oh,
like,
I'd do
of course
anything
she'd
for that.
say
Yeah,
it.
if
You
someone was
can't
to
say
offer that to
drugs,
me,
like-
yeah.
I'm surprised it hasn't come to light sooner, considering how long ago Talisa got done for dealing drugs, and then it was found out that it was this guy that kind of set it all up. Like, what have the authorities been doing to just wait around and let something
Sounds like the
like this
authorities
happen?
have been actively facilitating him by letting him give evidence in court, you know, behind screens and stuff like that, protecting his identity. So it's no wonder that it's taken so long to come to the fore, because there's obviously a lot of important people and institutions implicated in it.
That's not the sort of anonymity that's given to witnesses usually, is it really? You know, to be
Yeah.
hidden behind a screen, that's not something that is allowed to happen. So obviously,
Yeah, like,
He's-
what protection do other journalists get when they're exposing dangerous people? Why does this man, like, exposing Z-list celebrities for fairly minor crimes get massive protection?
but people are really making the most of being hacks as well, aren't they? You know, it seems like people are really trying to. Not only is it just kind of something that you do because your editor told you to do it or something like that, or the editor wanted the story, but it's people are actually making a living from kind of openly being hacks now. And
It's not good journalism. People kind of losing sight of what their job is and what they're meant to be doing, and essentially they're just ruining people's lives to get
Advance
money.
their own.
yeah.
Well,
like,
Rich,
you're not reporting the news, you're making the news.
Yeah.
well, Rich Pepiat has a film coming out, doesn't he, where he was a bit of a ethically a bit iffy when he was a hack, and he's made this film where he goes up to editors and basically does to editors what editors had reporters do to people out in the public and things like that. And I just think he's just trying to cash in on something that he knows is going on. I think that he was a part of that when he was, you know, when he was a hack, because he was at the Daily Star, and I think that's not news reporting at all. That's just kind of whatever is fiction, isn't it? You know, you're just making things happen and then reporting on it.
But we also have, I mean, this Emma Morgan, page 3 glamour model, says she was 24 years old and he pressured her for several hours to make her buy cocaine, like on the promise that she'd get in a
She's clearly not a
lucrative
Colombian
calendar.
drug lord, is she? If
No.
she's taken a couple of hours to convince her to buy some cocaine.
But is that even much of a story, to like massively be peer pressuring a young woman? Like, you know,
Yeah.
it's just very odd, I think, the whole thing.
And just to close off, our last story is about Charlene White of ITV News presenter, who decided not to put a poppy on her outfit while presenting the news, saying that she was kind of uncomfortable supporting just one charity but all the others. Do you think she's a valid reason behind this? I mean, it's sort of valid, but do you think she should have not put up the poppy on her outfit?
I do. I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with wearing a poppy. I think wearing a poppy is a great thing, but I think you should be free to choose to wear a poppy. And if you feel like you have to wear a poppy, it kind of removes the whole reason to have worn it in the first place, you know, like...
Wearing the poppy doesn't make you a good or bad person. You know what I mean? It's because you don't wear the poppy doesn't mean you necessarily don't give
Yeah.
to the British
And
Legion
doing
things
it
like that.
out of wearing it out of peer pressure or anything else, I just think is kind of
Saying that, I
not
think
really what
of
it's
all
about.
the causes to kind of renege against conformity on, this isn't a great one. Why select this one particularly? It's something which can almost everyone in our country and in most countries in the world can kind of relate to in a sense of loss, because you know First and Second World Wars and all wars really are just so devastating. You know, it's not one particular specific cause. It's just, you know, war in general, which is mourned and commemorated.
But then I guess if you're not allowed to wear any kind of emblems like that on TV, like things like HIV and cancer, which affects far more people than war in this country at least affects, and you're not allowed to wear that, but then all of a sudden it's a bit of a double standard between what you can and can't support.
I know, but the poppy appeal is such an institution. I don't see the point of.
But it is a charity though. That's the thing. I mean, because I think there's nothing wrong with wearing a poppy, but I understand the principle of what she's saying in that if you cannot support a charity publicly on television, then you should not be able to support any charity
I think she's taking an
publicly.
overly rational look at something which is very
No,
emotive.
I think other people have overreacted to it. I think that what she's done is just not worn something, and then someone else has called her up on it and has said, "Why is she not wearing this?" I think that her decision.
She didn't wear it last year, and as a result, on Twitter, she got a lot of racist.
To it,
I suppose,
yeah,
had she worn it to try and make a statement, but if it's just a personal thing, she's doing it hoping.
But she wears it in her private life. She donates to the
make any
Royal
sense
British
to me.
Legion.
That's her trying to make a point publicly.
You're not
I think
supposed
it's a
to.
good point to make, though. Like, I do understand where she's coming from, because although some charities are bigger than others and others have different meanings to people, other charities will be more important to certain people than the poppy appeals. So why not put them all on the same level?
And stuff like Graham Norton got in trouble for wearing an anti-HIV ribbon on the BBC, and I think I actually don't think it should be so blanket. I think they ought to be allowed to wear something subtle to support a cause like that.
Seeing as Graham Norton's not a news reporter, he doesn't have to be neutral. He can do whatever he wants essentially, but a news reporter is supposed to be completely neutral and unbiased. And so if Graham Norton gets in trouble for wearing something, it's still quite neutral. I mean, I think it's pretty much consensus in that HIV is a bad thing.
All right, so this show is going to come to an end, and you've just heard from the guests on Fourth Estate, Alex, Pippa, Alistair and Jasmine. We are back again on Monday afternoon. We're talking about the issues and news of the weekend that were happening all over the weekend. And our next show is The Gentleman with Jonathan Knight. So Alex, Pippa, Alistair and Jasmine, say goodbye to your wonderful audience.
You're welcome.
Bye.
And until Monday night, it's a good goodbye to you, and have a great evening.